My wife secretly inherited $300, $0 from her late grandmother, and convinced me to invest it in her business venture, only to find out she used it to buy a luxury apartment with her lover. Now she's filed for divorce and sued me for the house I paid for with my own savings. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, but here I am, living through what's probably the worst betrayal of my life. The thing is, I had no idea what was coming. Things seemed normal, ordinary even. My wife and I had been together for about 6 years. We married young, both ambitious, trying to build a life that looked good on paper. But behind the scenes, everything was falling apart. I just didn't realize it at first. It all started about 6 months ago. Inherited a pretty decent sum, 300 from her grandmother's estate. She was pretty excited about it, kept talking about investing it, starting some kind of business. She convinced me to put most of it into her venture, which she claimed was going to be the next big thing. I was skeptical, but she played the charm card. Said she'd handle everything, and I trusted her. I thought she'd use the money wisely, maybe start a boutique or some online store. It seemed harmless. But then little things started happening. She would get weird calls at odd hours, hide her phone, and delete messages. She'd be secretive about her laptop, and sometimes I'd catch her sneaking off in the middle of the night. I brushed it off at first, convincing myself she was just stressed or busy with her new project. Still, something felt off. She became more bitchy, snapping at me over small things, and whenever I asked about her plans, she'd give me vague answers or change the subject. One day I noticed her acting strange around her phone. She was unusually defensive, even more than usual. I decided to check her messages when she went to the store. I didn't want to invade her privacy, but I felt like I had to know what was really going on. That's when I saw it: text messages, flirty and suggestive, with a guy named Jason. There were pictures too, not explicit but enough to tell they had something going on. It was clear she was cheating on me. The worst part, she was lying about everything, saying she was working late or out with friends. I felt like I was punched in the gut. My mind raced. How could she do this? After everything we'd been through, after trusting her with my savings, my future. I didn't sleep that night. I kept going over everything, trying to find a way to confront her without losing my mind. I felt betrayed, angry, and just devastated. I realized she had been hiding a whole other life from me, and I had no idea how deep this went. The next day, I decided I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I needed answers. I waited for her to come home, heart pounding. When she walked through the door, I just blurted it out. "Who is Jason? I saw the messages. Are you cheating on me?" Her face froze for a second, then she put on that fake smile she always used when she was about to lie her ass off. She everything said I was paranoid, that Jason was just a friend, but I knew better. I could see it in her eyes, the guilt, the nervousness. She was caught, and she knew it. That moment changed everything. I felt a mix of rage and sadness I'd never experienced before. How could she betray me like this? After all the trust I'd given her, she was out there screwing around with some guy while pretending to be this perfect wife. I started questioning everything. The money, the marriage, what I'd done wrong. I thought about the inheritance, how she convinced me to invest it in her business, only to find out she used it to buy an apartment with Jason. The apartment I later found out she's living in now, not with me but with her lover. That discovery set off a chain reaction. I realized I had to do something. I couldn't let her get away with this, not without consequences. But I also felt powerless. I was just a regular guy, not some mastermind. Still, I knew I had to fight back, to take control of this mess. That's when I started planning my next move: how to expose her, how to reclaim what's mine, and how to finally put an end to this nightmare. After I found out about Jason and the apartment, everything in my world shifted. It was like stepping into someone else's nightmare. I couldn't believe she had lied so blatantly, not just about her late grandmother's inheritance, but about her entire life with me. It wasn't just the cheating, it was the betrayal of trust, the manipulation. I felt numb, but at the same time, a fire ignited inside me. I couldn't let her get away with it, not without a fight. The first thing I did was dig into everything I could find. I pulled out bank statements, looked at her phone records, and even hired a private investigator to confirm what I suspected. Sure enough, she had been sneaking around for months. The apartment she bought, fully paid with her inheritance with Jason's name on the lease. She had even gone as far as hiding the receipts and bank transfers. It was all so blatantly obvious now, but back then it felt like my entire life was crumbling. I started feeling angry, hot, uncontrollable rage. I'd trusted her, invested my savings based on her promises. We had plans, dreams. I thought we were building a future together. Turns out, she'd been planning her escape with her lover all along. And the worst part, she had the nerve to accuse me of being paranoid when I confronted her with the evidence. She lied, said Jason was just a business associate, and that I was overreacting. She called me insecure, accused me of not trusting her. That was the moment I realized how manipulative she was. She had spun a web of lies so well that I almost doubted myself. But I refused to be the fool here. I started documenting everything, screenshots, bank transfers, her lies. I also did some digging into her finances, trying to see what she'd done with the inheritance. That's when I discovered she had used part of that $300, $0 to buy the apartment with Jason. The apartment was in her name, fully paid off. She had even tried to hide it, but I found the proof. I felt sick. All those dreams we had of building something together gone. She had been planning her secret life for months, maybe longer. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time I wanted to do it with everything on the table. I called her at work and told her I knew everything. Her reaction, she burst into tears, but I could see the guilt behind it. She tried to deny everything, but I had the evidence. I told her I wanted a divorce, not just because of the affair, but because I couldn't trust her anymore. She yelled, called me paranoid, said I was overreacting, that I was crazy for accusing her of lying about the inheritance and the apartment. But I wasn't about to back down. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything in my head, the lies, the betrayal, the way she had spun her web of deceit. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach 1,000 times. I'd loved her, trusted her, and now I realized I never truly knew her at all. The woman I married was gone, replaced by someone who was willing to cheat, manipulate, and steal from me. I was hurt, furious, and honestly feeling pretty lost. The next morning, I made a decision. I was going to fight for what was mine. Not just the house, but my dignity. I had paid for that house with my own savings, and I wasn't going to let her take it away from me without a fight. I started talking to a lawyer, gathering evidence and preparing for the inevitable legal battle. I also reached out to friends and family, people who could support me through this mess. I knew I couldn't trust anymore, but I could trust myself to stand up and do what's right. All this was happening so fast, and I felt overwhelmed. One moment I was just a regular guy trying to make a life with his wife, and the next I was caught in a web of lies, betrayal, and legal battles. I realized that the betrayal went deeper than just cheating. It was about the lies surrounding the inheritance, the apartment, and her entire life with me. It felt like my world was falling apart, and I was just trying to hold on. But I also knew I had to keep going. I had to reclaim what was mine and figure out what the hell I was going to do next. The more I dug into her financials and the evidence, the angrier I got. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was how cold and calculated she'd been about everything. She convinced me to invest that inheritance into her business venture, which I now realize was just a cover to keep me in the dark. Meanwhile, she was funneling money into that apartment with Jason, planning her escape right under my nose. I kept thinking about how much I'd trusted her, how I'd believed she was honest, how she'd lied to me every step of the way. I started making plans. I wasn't just going to sit back and let her walk away with the house I paid for with my savings. I knew I had to act fast. I contacted a lawyer, showed her all the evidence I'd collected, and asked what my options were. The lawyer told me I had a strong case to claim the house since I was the one who paid for it, but I also knew would try to twist things around and say I was trying to control her or that I was jealous. That's her favorite tactic, playing the victim, even when she's the one cheating and stealing. In the meantime, kept up her act. She was still pretending to be the perfect wife, even though I knew better. She'd come home late, smell like perfume I didn't recognize, and try to brush me off. Like I was paranoid. She'd lie about where she was, about who she was with. I started keeping tabs on her, following her sometimes just to see if she'd slip up. One night, I followed her to the apartment she bought with Jason. I saw her go in, laughing with him, holding hands. It was like a punch to the gut. That's when I realized I'd been played for a fool. One of the worst moments was when I found out she'd actually moved into that apartment. I thought she was just visiting Jason, but no, she was living with him. I saw her car parked outside, and I saw her through the window, sitting on the couch texting him. It was real. She was gone, completely out of my life, and I was left with nothing but broken trust and a mountain of lies. That's when I decided I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I had to confront her again, face to face. So I arranged a meeting. I told her I knew about the apartment, about Jason, about everything. Her reaction: she got angry, defensive, said I was stalking her and that I was crazy. She tried to spin it again, claiming I was just jealous and insecure. She even called me possessive and paranoid, trying to make me doubt myself. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I had all the proof. I told her I wanted a divorce, that I wasn't going to be part of her web of lies anymore. That conversation was explosive. She yelled, called me names, accused me of ruining her life. She said I was controlling, that I was holding her back from her happiness. But I knew the truth. She'd been cheating, stealing, lying. I felt a mixture of relief and heartbreak. I was finally seeing her for what she really was. I realized I'd been living in a fantasy, thinking we were building a life together when she'd already checked out. In the days that followed, I felt a strange combination of sadness and anger. I was angry at her for deceiving me, for betraying everything we had. But I was also sad because I genuinely loved her once. Now, I was just trying to pick up the pieces. I filed for divorce, and I also started the process of claiming the house, which I believed was rightfully mine. I knew would fight it, probably try to claim that she deserved half or that I was trying to control her. But I had the receipts, the bank statements, the texts. I knew I had a solid case. I also started thinking about how to move forward. I couldn't keep living in this toxic environment, constantly looking over my shoulder, questioning everything. I decided that I'd rather be alone than in a marriage built on lies. I wanted to rebuild my life, but I knew it wouldn't be easy. The betrayal cut deep, and it's going to take time to heal. But I also realized something important. I should have trusted my instincts from the start. If I had, maybe I wouldn't be in this mess now. I learned the hard way that people can hide their true selves behind a pretty face and sweet words. Now, I'm just trying to figure out how to pick up the pieces and move on, knowing that I was betrayed by someone I once loved more than anything. The legal process dragged on for what felt like an eternity. Every day, I'd wake up with a knot in my stomach, knowing was probably plotting her next move. She was relentless, filing her own countersuit, claiming the house was a joint asset and trying to spin her lies even more convincingly. Her lawyer played the victim card, saying I was unfairly trying to take her property, even though I was the one who paid for it with my own savings. It was frustrating beyond belief. I knew the truth, though, and I had all the evidence to back it up. Meanwhile, behavior got worse. She'd call me incessantly, trying to guilt-trip me, calling me controlling and jealous. She even accused me of spying on her, which was true, but I only did it because I felt like I was losing my mind. Every time I saw her, she'd throw some new lie, some new excuse, trying to manipulate me into backing down. But I refused. I had to be strong, not just for myself, but for what was rightfully mine. And then came the day I got the official court papers. Was suing me for the house, claiming I had no right to it because I wasn't on the title. That was her game, trying to claim I was just some guy who threw money at her and that she deserved half. But I had the receipts. I paid for that house with my savings, my hard-earned money. The mortgage, the down payment, all of it. I knew I had a strong case, but winning in court isn't just about evidence. It's about patience, resilience, and not letting her gaslight me into giving up. The most shocking part was when accused me of being emotionally abusive, trying to turn everyone against me. She told her friends I was controlling, jealous, and unreasonable. I couldn't believe she'd go so far. She was trying to paint herself as the victim, even as she was out there screwing Jason and hiding the apartment. I felt sick every time I heard her spin her lies, but I kept my cool. I knew I had to stay focused on the facts. One night, I found out she'd been sneaking around with Jason again. I saw her car outside the apartment, and I overheard her talking to him on the phone. It was like a punch in the face all over again. I realized that she wasn't just cheating on me. She was actively trying to erase me from her life, making her move to the apartment, moving Jason in, and trying to pretend everything was fine. The betrayal ran so deep that I questioned whether I even knew her at all. I started feeling more numb than anything else. I trusted her, loved her, and now I was just trying to survive this nightmare. I couldn't sleep at night, replaying everything, wondering where I went wrong. Was I too demanding, too controlling, or was she just a liar from the start? The truth was, I'd never seen her for who she really was until now. All those little lies, the secret meetings, the fake smiles, they added up to a person I barely recognized. Despite all this, I refused to give up. I pushed forward with the legal fight. I met with my lawyer again, laid out my case, and prepared for the final showdown. I knew Side would try to twist everything, but I also knew the truth. I paid for that house, I had the receipts, and I wasn't going to let her take it away from me without a fight. I also started thinking about what I'd do if I lost, how I'd rebuild, how I'd move on. The thought of losing everything was terrifying, but I also knew I couldn't stay in this toxic situation. The most painful realization was that I had loved her more than anything, but she didn't love me back. She loved Jason, her new life, her freedom. I had been just a stepping stone for her, someone she used, then discarded. That realization hit harder than anything else. I had to accept that our marriage was over, that I was better off without her lies and manipulation. Still, it's hard to let go of the dreams I had built with her, the future I thought we'd have. In the end, I learned that trusting blindly can be dangerous. People can hide their true selves behind pretty words and fake smiles. The betrayal cut so deep, but it also made me realize I need to be more cautious, more aware of the signs. I can't change what happened, but I can choose how to move forward. And right now, I'm just trying to focus on healing, rebuilding my life, and making sure I never get like this again. The court hearings were brutal. Every session felt like walking through a minefield. His lawyer did everything they could to paint me as the jealous, controlling husband who was just upset because he was losing. Meanwhile, I had mountains of evidence, bank statements, texts, witness statements, that proved I was the one who paid for the house, that I had been financially responsible, and that claims were just a desperate attempt to steal what she couldn't legitimately claim. The biggest blow came when brought her own witnesses, friends who that I was emotionally abusive, that I controlled every aspect of her life. It was infuriating because none of it was true. I was just an ordinary guy trying to do right by his wife. Now suddenly I was the villain. I sat there listening to her lies, feeling like I was fighting a battle I couldn't win. But I knew I had to stay calm, stay focused, and present the facts. The day of the final hearing, I was nervous but also relieved. I knew this was the moment where everything would be decided. I had prepared my case meticulously, and I had faith that the truth would come out. My lawyer argued convincingly that I was the rightful owner of the house, that I had paid for it, and that had no legal claim to it. His lawyer countered with emotional appeals, but I could see the cracks in her story. She was desperate. Finally, the judge ruled. It was a long pause, the kind that feels like an eternity. When the gavel hit, I heard the words I'd been waiting for. I was awarded full ownership of the house. Looked stunned, then furious. She yelled something about how unfair it was, but the judge was clear. The evidence was overwhelming. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but also a deep sadness. I'd lost my marriage, and I knew I'd never get those years back. After the court, I confronted one last time. She was crying, screaming, trying to guilt-trip me into changing my mind. She called me a monster, said I was ruining her life, but I just looked at her coldly. I told her she had lied, cheated, and manipulated her way into this mess, that she'd betrayed everything we built together. I told her she should be ashamed of herself. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her, and I knew I'd done everything I could to fight for what was mine. In the weeks that followed, I started the process of moving on. I sold the apartment she bought with Jason, another blow, but I knew I couldn't keep living in the shadow of her lies. I found a small place for myself, a quiet apartment where I could breathe again. I cut contact with entirely. I blocked her number, her social media. I didn't want to see her happy with Jason, living the life she'd stolen from me. I had to focus on rebuilding my life piece by piece. Looking back, I realize how much this experience has changed me. I trusted the wrong person and it cost me everything. My marriage, my peace of mind, my sense of security. But I also learned a lot about myself. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought, that I can stand up for myself, even when everything feels like it's falling apart. I learned that honesty and integrity matter more than I ever appreciated before. And I learned that some people are just good at hiding their true selves behind a mask. Now I'm trying to move forward. I'm working on healing, on trusting again, but more cautiously this time. I know I'll never forget what happened, but I refuse to let it define me. I want to believe in love again someday, but I'll be more careful. I'll read the signs, listen to my gut, and never let someone manipulate me like that again. It's a hard lesson, but one I had to learn the hard way. And if there's one thing I want others to take away from my story, it's this: trust is earned, not given blindly. Watch the signs, protect yourself, and don't be afraid to fight for what's right. Now, sitting here reflecting on everything, I realize how much this whole ordeal has changed me, not just as a man, but as someone who used to believe in the fairness of life and the honesty of people. I used to think that if you worked hard and played by the rules, things would turn out okay. Turns out, you can be the most honest person in the world and still get by someone you trusted with your life. That betrayal cut so deep it changed my outlook completely. What hurts the most is knowing I gave her everything, my love, my trust, my savings, and she threw it all away for some guy, some apartment, some new life she was building behind my back. I keep asking myself how I missed the signs, how I didn't see her true colors sooner. But the truth is, she was good at hiding it. She played the part of the perfect wife so well that I believed in her. That's a lesson I'll carry with me forever. People can hide their real selves behind a mask, and sometimes it takes losing everything to see who they really are. The financial aspect of all this hit me hard, too. That inheritance was supposed to be a fresh start, a boost to build something better. Instead, she used it to buy her freedom, her escape route with Jason. It's bitter to think about how she manipulated that money, convincing me to invest in her business venture, while she was already planning her exit. I realize now how naive I was to trust her with my savings, how blind I was to the warning signs. But I also learned that I have to be more careful, more guarded, because some people are just good at deceiving others. Despite everything, I feel a strange sense of relief. I'm finally free from the chaos, from the lies. I can breathe again. I've learned to stand up for myself, to fight for what's right, and to trust my instincts. I know it'll take time to fully heal, but I'm committed to rebuilding my life. I want to focus on myself, on my future, and on making sure I never get caught off guard like this again. I've lost a lot, but I've also gained clarity about who I am, what I deserve, and what I won't tolerate anymore. To everyone out there who might be in a similar situation, trust me, it's a brutal lesson, but it's also a necessary one. Don't ignore the signs. Don't let anyone manipulate or gaslight you. And most importantly, don't be afraid to stand up for yourself, even if it means losing someone you loved. Sometimes the hardest thing is walking away, but in the end, it's the only way to truly reclaim your dignity and peace of mind. As I look ahead, I know there will be more challenges. There always are. But I also know I've come out stronger, wiser, and more resilient than I ever thought possible. Life threw me a curveball and I took the hit. Now I'm picking myself up, dusting myself off, and moving forward, alone but free. And that's a victory in itself.